No.
You're never actually going to be at a point where you're comfortable and done and ready to be relaxed to see people. So you might as well let the people you love interrupt the work that you, even if you love it, right?
Yeah. No,
Because
I 100%
at the
agree.
end, like, that is what matters.
Hey team, and welcome to episode 3 of Jeans and a Nice Top podcast. How cute is that? Episode 3, season 3. Is that good luck? Is number 3 a lucky number? Not sure. But anyway, this episode's a lucky one and a special one to me, as it's an incredible interview with Ed Cunningham, the founder of A Need to Read. He's the first man of season 3, not of the entire podcast. Please go and check out my other males on the season 2. However, he brings a really beautiful insight, and we have a really interesting conversation around everything surrounding books, but also thought processes and the way that we view the world. I think we both went in expecting a very different version of each other and actually came out laughing quite a lot and being quite good pals. I'd like to hope you'll agree with me. But anyway, as always, don't forget to rate, review and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram @SmileToHealth and check out my book on Amazon. It's called Curse to Feel. Ciao!
Hey team, welcome to another episode of Jeans and a Nice Top. And this week we are blessed with the one and only Ed Cunningham, aka the founder of A Need to Read. I normally like to embarrass my guests by giving them an intro in front of them, but my New Year's resolution is to be kind. No, I'm joking. I'm not going to do it this time. I want you to give your intro, how you see it. For those that don't know you, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, look, no, you've put the onus on me, and it's never a good thing because self-promotion is not my strong point. I actually am quite against it as a concept. But so yeah, Ed Cunningham, I run the podcast I Need to Read, and it's a podcast about books, book reviews and chats with authors, or like quote unquote public figures, or whatever. Anyone I find interesting, basically, I'll bring onto the podcast to have a chat and hopefully center that around books, because I didn't read books when I left school, or when I was in school. I used to watch the film and try and cheat my way through it. And when I was like 23, I had like a pretty severe like dip in my mental health. And I was like, well, I'll see what's in these books. Started reading.
There's book stuff.
Started to understand a few things a little bit better. And I was like, wow, I guess like the route through this shit is understanding. And then I'm completely obsessed with books, basically. So I read all the time. And somehow I managed to make that my job now, is talking about the books that I read and hopefully encouraging other people to do the same, because I think obviously that it's life-changing, because it's what I do.
Yeah, it's literally like transformed your life. I can imagine if you thought about yourself like at school, because that was going to be one of my first questions. Were you a reader at school, or is it something you've transitioned into? I can imagine if you now met your younger self, what do you think they would say?
It would be a real clash, because I'd be like, mate, what are you doing right now? Well, I know what you're doing because I've done it, and you need to stop being a little twat. And he'd probably look at me and think I was a right dork. Like, I go to bed at 9 o'clock. I read books a lot. I don't really like watching TV anymore. I don't drink. It would be a completely different person to who I was when I was like 16, 17.
I think that's what's so interesting about that transition through, even just like if you think pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, how much everyone's changed. Like every couple of years, the transition, especially in your 20s, 30s, I think, you're unrecognizable each year, like because the transformation process. And then when you add books to the mix, self-development, all of that, the transformation is even more dramatic.
Yeah, we overestimate like how much we're going to change, or underestimate, sorry. Like if you were to look back 10 years, you'd think, oh my God, this change in who I am is beyond comprehension. But if I was to ask you, hey, in 10 years time, like, what do you think you're going to be doing? You'd be like, yeah, something similar to what I'm doing now. Like my values won't have changed that much. So we dramatically underestimate how much we're going to change as a person. And that can lead you into, like, once you kind of understand that concept, that can send you straight into existential crisis. And then it's not going to be a good time. It's like, well, I can't trust myself. I find that personally like quite liberating. So I'm like, whatever decision I make, it really doesn't fucking matter, because in a year's time, I probably would think it's wrong anyway.
That's so. My friend Alex, who will listen to this and giggle when I say it, her favorite saying is, "It's not that deep." So any decision that she makes, she's like, "It's not that deep. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong. It's not that deep." Or if you meet someone and you fall out, it's not that deep. And I love that. I feel like it, like you said, it's you make a decision in the moment that feels right. And if it feels right, run with it. But in a year's time, you might be thinking, what the hell did you do that for?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you weren't a reader before. What was the first book that made you pick up and go, oh, actually, this reading stuff, these words on pages aren't that bad?
So I listened to a few books when I was working in sales. And I listened to like The Way of the Wolf or like The Wolf of Wall Street, all these like narcissist sales blokes. And I was thinking, this is going to make me the best salesman ever. Therefore, my life will be so good. And then I actually listened to The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which is become a cliche, but it's become a cliche because it's popular, and it's popular because it's good.
It resonates.
Yeah, like it's a counterintuitive things work, right? It's nice to think, oh, actually, we've been doing it wrong so long. So The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck was huge for me, but it's like we were just having this conversation on change. A lot of the books that I have read and have they have contributed to me changing the person's growth. I wouldn't necessarily recommend them to people now because my ability to pick a good book has obviously got a lot better over time, and to filter through the people who are like, oh, you've stolen that idea from this person, or there's a lot of shoddy writers out there who just steal ideas and don't actually like give credit to other people. So I'm reading, unfortunately, I'm starting to read a lot more like solid science and philosophy and psychology, which I'm so aware is just going to make me into an insufferable douchebag, but it's just the way it goes.
It's one of those things, the more you dive into, whether it be self-help books or you become like an expert in classics, the more you dive into that, the more of a douchebag you kind of have to become.
It sucks.
I feel like it's the catch-22, right? You have all this knowledge, you become a douche. Would you say that you pick more non-fiction over fiction?
Yeah, so I do love a good fiction book. I haven't read one for the last few weeks because I just read A Little Life. I don't know if you've heard of it or read it.
I've heard of it, but give our listeners a little bio.
You don't even want the bio because all I can say is that you'll hate reading it for the majority of it. At the end, you'll be so glad you read it. It'll probably be your favorite novel ever. But every now and then, memories from the book will be just like thrown up in your brain, and it'll feel like you've been punched in your emotions. Actually, the way that I describe it is that consider your emotions like a puzzle within inside you that's just been pulled apart and just put back into the wrong place. It is the most brutal, beautiful book I've ever read. It's incredible. In terms of a novel, it's not the best non-fiction book I've ever read because it's obviously not real. But I'm starting to read more classics as well, and the ones that are like the prize winners and stuff like that. So a couple of books by Hermann Hesse. He's like a 1920s German poet. He wrote Steppenwolf and Siddhartha. And I think for people in their 20s who are trying to work out whether they still like going drinking, or if they want to have a little bit more of a wholesome life, or if they don't really know how they feel about society anymore, like those two books are brilliant to get into. But yeah, it's mostly non-fiction now, and I'm leaning heavily towards philosophy and psychology books.
I think that makes sense with your journey from, like you said, the mental health blip coming through. You kind of want to understand your psyche and where that's going and where that's coming from. And I'll dive into that a second. But I think it's interesting with fiction because I definitely was a reader at school, absolute nerd, or a boffin, as we'd call it from where I'm from. Literally always had my head in a book, carried one at all times. Still like it now. I've got like a personal library on top of my wardrobe. But I was always a fiction book. Like I loved the escape of going into this world and just disappearing into the narrative. But then now I've also made the shift into more self-help, self-development, understanding the mind. Do you think that's kind of a natural progression as you go through life and want more answers? Or
I do. I definitely think when you first start reading, like it's a good idea to read the books that are the like popular self-helpy kind of books, because you need that information translated essentially, because that's all they are, right? These are like probably science writers who will like take all these studies and they'll try and present them in a nice way that people will understand. But at a certain point, you get to a stage, you know, actually, I want to get the information like from source, so I can interpret it in my way. And I've started doing that with philosophy books. I've just read like Letters from a Stoic and On the Shortness of Life, and just reading a lot of Stoic philosophy at the moment, because that seems to be the most popular philosophy apart from Buddhism that people communicate in sort of like self-help literature. And reading it, I was like, well, it seems like a lot of this is being mistranslated. So I'm glad that I've started reading it, and I will then probably mistranslate it to people from now on. So I'm going to become what I
one of the
like. Yeah.
One of the mistranslators. I think that's what's so interesting though about a book is you cannot control its interpretation. Even if it's a book of facts, how someone will take that is so different. It can be interpreted in a million ways. So you've essentially got one story that then is a million stories depending on who picks up the book.
Yeah, I saw an Ernest Hemingway quote the other day. It was about the old man and the sea. It's like people trying to attach so much meaning to it, but the old man was an old man, the sea was a sea, the shark was a shark, and the fish was a fish. Like,
it
don't
is
stop trying to attach meaning to my work.
Literally, it's that I hate. Actually, I feel like I'm referencing TikTok, which makes me seem really unintelligent. But that it is what it is. Like that phrase is so relevant for anything creative. I think because people try and add so much depth to everything, and actually some things are not that deep. They're just
it's not that deep.
It is a fish. Yeah, it is a fish. It is a man. Going back to obviously, if you feel okay to share, I'd love to know, obviously mental health is a big thing that finally people are talking about, being far more open about, which is amazing because I think especially I'm 26, so like back when I had my mental health struggles, which was like a decade ago, mental health was still very much taboo. It was very much like, oh, we don't talk about it, like hide it under the carpet. And I think especially as a male, that's still very much the case in a lot of essences. So I'd love to know why you went to books out of everything, because a lot of people will pick a lot more unhealthy coping mechanisms and other mechanisms, or we all reach for different things. For me, it was yoga at the time. So I'd love to know what made you go to books and why you would recommend books for people that are struggling with mental health.
So I'd done the unhealthy stuff before, like I'd done the drinking, I'd done the drugs, and it was when I was at the point that I was in denial of like how I was feeling. So it wasn't that I consciously made this really amazing and healthy choice to go for books. Like I definitely tried to sniff my way out of depression for a while, and that doesn't work. I've always been quite an honest person. It's just I seem to miss being honest with myself about how I was feeling. So it just got to a stage where I had a few panic attacks at work and like a mental breakdown, I would say, and I just had to go to therapy. And through that and through reading, I just became so much more comfortable. One, like just with self-assessments, like I'm constantly making these assessments for myself, and like at the start of each day and at the end of each day, I'm like, right, how am I doing? What's going wrong? Anything going wrong? What's going right? I'm constantly making these assessments, but reading as a tool is a lonely activity, right? It allows you to take in the information. No one's asking you questions, but it will throw these questions up to yourself. And even if you're reading fiction, like it might show you a scenario that you've been in before, or you might be in the future, and you making these judgments on how that person should have behaved, or you would have behaved in that zone. But books are comfort, right? For people who aren't comfortable being vulnerable with others, or aren't in a position to go to therapy, or don't quite see the value in it yet, or are waiting until it's going to be an emergency to go and chat to someone. A book is a great way to slow yourself down.
That's so true. I think I love the phrase that you said, that checking in with yourself, because I find even now, especially like I live in London, the pace of life is crazy.
Shit, isn't it, man?
It's just relentless. It is relentless. Like I don't know how people manage to get 8 hours sleep, maintain a career, a social life, good friendships, check in with their family, eat your 5 a day, work out, keep the house tidy, like make sure you're okay, let alone like everything else that like is thrown your way that then throws all of that off course. It's just absolutely.
Shall I tell you a secret?
Okay, go on.
They don't. No one does all these things.
I feel like you have to pick one a week.
There'll be like one person who's like, I do this, but no one can do it all. And this whole like idea of perfect is such bullshit. If you, I think about this when people think about jealousy, because online life and social media just creates this whole like jealous.
It's the grass.
It's like a community of jealousy. It's horrible. And like even people with their friends are like, oh my God, I'm so jealous of where you are. It looks so amazing. It's like, yeah, but what about where you are right now? Why don't you look around you and be in that place? It's not natural for us to be looking at other people's lives and thinking, oh my God, how the hell do they manage to do all that? Because the likely scenario is they don't. And they're struggling just as much as you. And it's just one day. Yeah. And oh my God, the people who do like the day in the life, I don't know how I'm going to take them down, but at some point I will.
Day in the life, what I eat in a day, all of those videos they actually make me want to peel my skin off, because they just annoy me so much. Because even if you just looked at my week, every day is completely different. And most of the time I am so busy, I don't have the time to film a day in the life. And that day in the life is never reflective of most of the average humans that walk around. And I think, going back to the checking in with yourself, I think we're such an avoidance society. And I think that's why less and less people are reading, because they're not able to sit there and just be, whether that be to have a moment of peace, to sit with a book, to sit in the moment, like you said, to look around and be acknowledging of where you actually are. I feel like instead we're so used to using phones to avoid, using alcohol to avoid, drinks to avoid, busyness to avoid, comparison to avoid. And I think, in a weird way, like, books are therapy, and that you can't avoid it, because you have to sit with the narrative that you're reading that might bring up stuff for you. Or if it's a self-help book, it's definitely going to make you check in with yourself. I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Well, there's something that instantly came up to my mind then when you said that, about this like busyness, and reading Seneca's book a couple of weeks ago. He talks of this idle busyness, and he says that people should have no right to fear death if they fill their life with this idle busyness. And this is just this fake busyness. They're just moving from place to place. I know people didn't have phones 2,000 years ago when he wrote the book, but like if someone's got like 6-7 hours screen time a day, that's actually a waste of life. And there are people like, oh, I need it for work. It's like, yeah, but you don't need it that much for work. You need to get out of this like pixelated world. And I almost actually jacked in the podcast and the Instagram before Christmas. I've been there
so many times when you have a crisis with it and you're like, I just want to get off it, remove me.
Well, it's just like I didn't want to be part of that world of these like, get ready with me, do this with me, do that. Or people like, there's so much unsolicited advice, and so many people say to me like, oh, you should be so much more confident in what I'm saying. I'm like, no, I've got a really healthy level of skepticism. I can't go giving advice on a grand scale, because if someone's looking at my life and maybe they're jealous, like, they don't know how many friends I've got, or how many, like, what my love life is like, or how much I exercise, or what I eat, and how that is like. There's so many different parts of people's lives, and I'm not saying that those parts of my lives are bad. Obviously, they're amazing, but
10 out of 10, you know what I mean? Always.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many. All right, a better example would be like people who idolize someone like Elon Musk. Like, oh my God, Elon Musk, mate's like, yeah, that bloke's probably got no friends. No friends, no life, works 18 hours a day. You don't want that life.
And I've been there with obviously not to the level of Elon Musk, but like you, I wish. No, I actually don't wish. I wouldn't want that for my life. But I find the more you chase success or a specific goal, the more other things have to compromise, right? It's like that juggling act we were talking about earlier. You do have to like compromise and sacrifice on things. So I do think it's interesting, like you said, when people talk about jealousy, because it's like you're only seeing a snapshot of that entire person's world. And like, yes, you might see that, for example, I had someone message me the other day, oh, you're just bossing it all. Like, you know, you eat well, you work out, you have all these great friends, you live your life. And I went, my lunch was a bag of pop chips and hummus, and it's been that way for the past 3 days because I haven't had time to do a food shop. I cannot remember the last time I worked out. My friends are like, can you fit me in for the next 5 to 15 working days because you're not replying? I was like, you're literally just seeing me do one thing that's taken up 4 hours of my day to actually plan to happen, when there's no like actual realistic perspective of everything. And again, that goes back into like the books, is I think that's what's so brilliant about books, is that especially like if we go into some of the fiction and the classics, you see that torment, you see the full picture. You don't just see the one person having that one conversation from that one side. You see both sides and all of the situations that have led to them having that conversation in the first place.
Yeah, it's really nice in that. And when it comes to making these decisions in your life, like the word decide literally comes from the word cut off. Like there are an infinite things you're saying no to every time you say yes to something else. So like people making these decisions, that's liberating, by the way. That shouldn't be scary. It's that, once again, it's not that deep. Let's go back to your friend. Like you're making these decisions, it doesn't really matter. But like for you, it sounds like maybe sacrifice other stuff for your friends, sacrifice work shit for your friends. I know I'm telling you what to do, and I'm silly for doing so.
Oh no, I don't mind it. I use myself as an example because
this is because I've been guilty of this in the past, of being like, no, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. Sorry guys, I'm so busy, I can't see you for 3 weeks. Like, do you know what? My friend could walk over the road tomorrow and gets flattened by a bus, and I'll fucking be so gutted if I hadn't seen them. And do you know what? Work, it's you're never done with it.
No,
you're never actually going to be at a point where you're comfortable and done and ready to be relaxed to see people. So you might as well let the people you love interrupt the work that you, even if you love it, right?
Yeah. No,
because
I 100%
at the
agree.
end, like, that is what matters. And it's so, people think it's a cliche. Like, oh yeah, well, I probably won't die. It's like, yeah, but the thing is, you actually like legitimately might. So let's acknowledge that. And let's spend time with the people that we give a fuck about.
That matter. Yeah. The people that build our novel of the world, I guess. There's that famous quote, isn't there? It's repurposed all the time, but it's, you're the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that's often used in a negative way. Cut out the people like who are toxic in your life and all of that. And yes, that's very valid. But also, like you said, if you spend the majority of your time working, hustling, plowing through, the things and the people and the environment that you're spending most of your time with is stress, overworked, exhaustion, all of these negative things. Well, I'd like to believe you don't feel any of those things when you're with your friends, right? When you're with your friends, you should feel relaxed, joyful. I normally piss myself laughing with my friends because they're just hysterical. They're just so much fun, and I feel completely at ease and in the moment.
And really imagine choosing work over that.
Exactly. Yet we all do it over and over again. Why? How did we fall into this trap? Carnage. Me and my housemate were talking about the other day, actually, about the 9 to 5 and the Monday to Friday. Who decided we worked 5 days a week and got 2 days off?
I'm pretty sure it's capitalism. But I mean, that's better than what it used to be. Like, we are living in, like, it's quite a good age for stuff. Like, it could be a lot worse if we were born 60 years ago. But yeah, no, it's bullshit. I think in our lifetime, should we not get hit by a bus,
fingers crossed,
we'll see a 4-day week, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's coming. And that moves really nicely into, I'm definitely going to misquote this, but you posted something on your Instagram a while ago, actually, but I loved the concept. And it was about how you only need 15 minutes a day and to read. I think it was like calculated up as 22 books a year, and the average book is 267 pages or something like that.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll misquote it as well, the exact maths. But look, if you read 15 minutes a day, it's essentially let's say you're doing a page a minute or whatever, or translate it to 15 pages a day. Maybe that takes you 22 or 23 minutes, which isn't really that long.
No,
think about it, it's not even 2% of your day. To just give it to
yourself
to read 22 books a year, it will change your life. And I don't say that lightly. Like, I was bright before I read, but now I have a real like confidence in my intellect, and that is like, in school, people are like, oh, nerd, like you say, like, oh, you're like a boffin. But that's really important. To be able to get your point across, to be able to filter through the information that you're taking in, and to be able to think critically, you have to assess information on a constant basis, and you can do that by reading. So if you can read for 15 minutes a day, which, like, I'm pretty sure everyone can, and there'll be people there like, but I've got this, I've got that, I've got these responsibilities, and it's so easy for me to say, look, I've got no kids, I'm single, I pretty much do what I want with my day. But when I was working from 8 until 7 p.m, like in sales, and then going to jiu-jitsu after work, and all of this like idle busyness thing that I was doing in pursuit of like work, I was fitting in reading, because you just have to like value it, and it won't take you many books until you start to value it. You just have to force it a little bit.
That habit. I said a while ago, I think it was on my Instagram actually, about like ways I bring habits in. And reading was a big one, because I used to be a big reader, really lost touch when I moved to London and got caught up in that busyness, and I stopped, and I also felt myself regressing in like my opinions of the world, like, because for me books are like travel. You get exposed to a ton of different opinions, experiences, thought processes, which then enables me to be a more open-minded, considerate human being, but also a more analytical one, like you said, in that I can process information and say, not quite sure about that. I'm reading it, but no, that doesn't sit with me. Or, oh, actually, I really value this opinion, I'm going to research it more. But one of the ways I love the 15 minutes a day thing, because I think it's so accessible. And I literally did that in the sense that I used to put my book on top of my phone. So I have a bedside table, my phone is on next to my bed, as most people's is. And I put my book physically on top of my phone. And I told myself, and you have to be strict with yourself, like you said, that I could not touch my phone until I had read 10 pages of that book. That was my rule. And 10 pages, I mean, depends how quick a reader you are, but that's nothing.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, like you said, when you do the maths and you add up, and that 10 pages at 15 minutes equates to 22 books, which is 22 different opinions, different experiences, different stories that you're exposing yourself to, rather than the same busyness.
Yeah, for sure. And I have this thing, and I have to say on every podcast, is get your phone out your room while you're asleep. How tempting is it if you get up in the middle of the night to just grab your phone? So tempting. Charge it outside your room. You can get an alarm clock from Amazon or wherever. A Casio alarm clock's like £6. I don't have one now because I gave it to my friend, but I've got a Lumi alarm clock. I've got a Lumi myself. Well, there you go.
I just leveled up this year.
Yeah.
It's a game changer with a little sunrise. Oh my goodness.
It is such a nice way to wake up. But if you can't afford a Lumi, or you're not precious enough to wake up to sunlight like me and you are, then the £6 alarm clock is great. And sleeping with your phone out your room, I think it takes the phone out of your head, which is super important if you get up in the middle of the night. And I mean, I'm always up in the middle of the night for a piss or something like that. I can't. Yeah. I think that's part of getting older as well. It kind of sucks.
We're just plowing through and trying not to get hit by a bus.
Yeah.
So I feel like we've touched quite a lot actually on, like, you mentioned the day in the life, the like what I eat in a day, is all of that, and there's a lot of this romanticizing of self-care. And I feel like books have now become that as well, in the sense of certain books are pushed to the forefront, and being that girl in inverted commas, or is like, this is like loads of big trends going around. And that also links into the whole thing of having to do it all. And I guess I'd like to know, one, your opinion on that, and whether you think it's a good or a bad thing that books are becoming this new form of self-care in the trend sense, but also your advice on people that are maybe getting brought into reading via this avenue, but how to actually keep it as a consistent habit in their life and a positive one, rather than another thing that's just adding to their list of things they have to do that they're not good enough, that is another reason they're not, in inverted commas, perfect. Sorry, it's quite a long one.
No, that's all right. It's just I have to think about what I'm about to say here, because this is, I almost lost half my audience recently for my change of opinion on these things. And I actually think the whole manifesting and the whole vision boards and all of that, I think this is dangerous. I think this whole self-love thing is quite dangerous. I think people focusing on building their self-esteem is dangerous. There's a lot of this like perfectionism thing that's going around, and if you get too sucked up into the self-help world or this whole self-care thing, you will become a perfectionist, because you're not heading into that because you think you're good enough. There's things about affirmations. Affirmations don't work for people with low self-esteem. It's proven by science. The most helpful thing that you can do with an affirmation is say it out loud and watch why you disagree with it and work on that. But this whole social perfectionism thing is one of the leading sort of causes with suicide. Obviously mental health issues are, but to go a bit deeper, I think his name's Rory O'Connor. There's a suicide sort of research institute in Glasgow that he works for, and there's a book called Selfie by Will Storr, and it's called Why the West Has Become Self-Obsessed. And that book completely changed the way that I look at all this stuff, to a point of I used to take the piss out of it a little bit because I thought it was a little bit funny, whereas now, like, I actually want to change it. I feel like there are a lot of mentally ill people being sucked into this, and it's not okay. And
because they're trying to help themselves,
and because they're trying to help themselves, and the people that are selling it are ignorant to the reasons why they're doing something wrong, and that's a real shame. And I know that a lot of them see the stuff that I post and continue to do it, and that I'm then conflicted, because I'm like, oh, I think I'm right, I think I know better, but I'm getting the information from the sources, and like I'm fact checking this shit. I'm going to these websites and I'm actually finding the information. So I think it's really dangerous. However, if you feel like total dog shit and you hate yourself, introducing a little bit of self-love. I don't like the whole self-love thing. I think people should aim for self-compassion, but let's not be picky. If someone absolutely hates themselves with a sense of brutality, that is a positive thing. So I'm conflicting in a sense, like, of course it does help some people, but it's not long-term help.
No.
And
it's almost
people are upset because it doesn't work, but there's a fucking reason it doesn't work. And then the whole manifesting
I've really
thing.
opened Pandora's box.
Yeah. I was worried that you'd ask me a question like this.
No, but I love this because I think it's really important to have these conversations, because as somebody that has come from a very spiritual yoga #namaste background, but is also very academic, I'm like you, I'm very into the science. I want the facts, I want the details. I'm in the same position of you at the moment, in that my Smile to Health platform is very much about self-care and self-love, but I don't want to call it that anymore. And I don't want to call it that anymore because of what you've just said, in the sense that this version of self-love that we're being sold is just another tick list we have to tick off and do. Like, everyone's all of a sudden drinking matcha, getting up at 6 a.m, writing, journaling without any thought process behind why they're actually doing it.
I'm grateful for the blue sky. It's like, no, you're not.
No, you're not. You're just writing it because because you're like, oh, today I'm grateful that I've got to write, I'm grateful for this. It's actually, if you sat there and went, okay, I feel a bit overwhelmed, what am I happy I've got right now? And then you look around and go, do you know what, my bed sheets are quite fluffy and I like that because it feels soft. And do you know what, I actually went to bed last night at a decent time.
Or just like, why am I overwhelmed? What is it? How can I sit with this? How can I face this? Because that's what's really going to matter. Like, throughout your life, the sooner you face this shit that makes you overwhelmed, the sooner you get to move past that. Of course, you're probably going to jump over that fence and then hit another one, but you're in like flow of progress and of sitting down and facing this stuff. It's interesting, like talking about gratitude and stuff like that. So like writing down what you're grateful for, it seems to be kind of quite an ineffectual way to do gratitude. The way that people actually get the kind of like physiological benefits of gratitude is through story and through people thanking them for stuff they've done, or hearing stories of other people who are grateful for something. And that's how people attach to stuff, is through story. Like, that's why novels are great for like development of like personality and empathy and stuff like that, because you attach to these stories. There is another thing on like visualization as well, is people will feel like shit. They're like, right, let me just visualize what my perfect life is. And firstly, what's a perfect life?
Again.
When's that ever going to come? Like, wouldn't it be so much better to just be in complete acceptance of what is here and now, as opposed to waiting for this like success or this perfection? It doesn't actually motivate you to go and get that, because it lowers your blood pressure. It makes you all nice and relaxed. And then you're like, oh, I can put that off for tomorrow. And then there's this whole like neoliberal idea that we have to become these good citizens who can become like better, like cogs in the machine. And it's such a huge can of worms to open once you look at it and think, maybe this is bullshit. I honestly wake up in the morning, and after I meditate, I'm like, right, what is going on the internet today? Who is like just not doing
hopping
the
on
right
a trend
thing? Hopping on a trend, or like it's crazy, like manifesting. Like I put something on Instagram today. Like it's like there's
if someone else quotes The Secret to me one more time,
I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna pull it apart and hopefully I'll change some people's minds. But I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily believe in magic. I like you said you like science. Like, you know, I'm sure
obviously, obviously, livid. I didn't get my Hogwarts acceptance. Outrageous behavior. But other than that,
that's about as reasonable as manifesting. It's just a book. It's like made up, right? There is so much privilege involved in this like manifesting world, and me and my flatmate have been talking about this. Like, I'm not hideous, right? If I was, maybe my podcast wouldn't do so well, because that is how shallow society is, right? I do a video talking about how the brain works, and someone will be like, "Oh, your eyes." I'm like, that is not it, guys. That's not what I'm trying to talk about. I have to acknowledge that, right? And I'm from a position of extreme privilege. Like, white, cisgender male, straight. The only real thing is that like I've had mental health issues, but like
same here.
That's kind of like temporary. For me to be like, guys, all you have to do is like believe and achieve it. It's like, okay, why don't you go and preach that in Afghanistan? I don't know if you've heard that like the Taliban are rising to power again. Maybe you should go and hand out like copies of The Secret, you know, really make a difference in the world.
And then they'll manifest.
It frustrates me so much, man. Yeah. So God, yeah, sorry that you asked me that question, but it's
no, I'm not sorry I've asked it, because I think it's so important. Because on the one hand, I'm like, I love the fact that techniques I've been using and have dabbled with over the years, whether that be reading, meditation, travel, goal setting, like having a vision of where you want to be is what my idea of goal setting is. But then you have to break that down into steps that you then action. You can't just look at the goal and jump to the top of the ladder. You have to action steps. And I think this is the problem. I love that it's being broadcast in a sense that people are discovering it that may never have discovered it if they hadn't have gone to a dark place, because that's why we discovered these things, right? But then what I don't like is they're missing out really important bits of information that are actually the tools that make these things useful. So you know, if we talk about goal setting, for example, the idea isn't to sit there and manifest, I want to go on holiday to Mexico.
I want a boyfriend.
I want a boyfriend. It's like, you can't sit there and want a boyfriend, but never leave your house, not work on yourself, not know who you want, not actually date and work through the mess and figure out, oh, I like that about them, didn't like that. Off we go. Like, you have to work. We miss out the mess in social media, and we use the word, I'm actually going to use the word magic, but your mess is your magic. Like that. Stuff where stuff goes wrong and you've tried it and it completely flops, or you know, you dated someone and it went tits up. Like that is where the growth is, the learning is, the progression is, not in the perfection or the ticking of boxes.
I like that. No, I definitely do. Is people have this like misconception that we think we're all like hedonists, we're these pleasure seekers, we want to be happy all the time. You don't want to be happy all the time. That's not a life. There's an old American novelist called Robert Nozick, I think his name is. It's like in the 1970s, and he came up with this thought experiment of the experience machine. So let's imagine you've gone to sleep tonight and you just wake up, you're not in your room, you're in a white room, and there's a guy with a lab coat. Hey, like how's it going? It's just your yearly like health check. I just want to see how you're getting on. You're like, well, where the fuck am I? Like,
dude,
this is not where I went to sleep. So, oh no, don't worry. Like, we can just put these nodes on your brain. You'll be straight back into the simulation, back to your like happy and healthy and lovely life. I just wanted to like check how you are, and also, do you want to go back in? People think like they want to plug back into it, and this is why The Matrix was such a popular film, and that's probably where they got the idea for The Matrix, right? But we don't actually want that. We need a little bit of suffering. And maybe even borderline quite a lot of suffering. And this doesn't mean that you have to go and seek it out, because let's face it, like life will serve it up.
Oh, you don't have to ask for it. It'll just hit you clean in the face. Like you can feel like you're on an absolute ride of a high. Like I had this moment last year where I was like, everything seemed to like align. I was on top form, and then out of nowhere, it was like bam, bam, bam. Everything burnt to ashes, and I was like, good, we start again then, like off we go. But then I find, I don't know about you, but when you come back from the ashes like the phoenix, if we're going to quote you know, like Harry Potter and all of that again. Kind of stuff, I know I'm such a nerd, I love it, as you can probably tell. You would then look back at that stuff you thought was riding the high and living your best life in inverted commas, and actually once you've done that growth bit from the ashes, you look at it and go, oh wow, I really didn't want that. That wasn't actually happiness, or well, it was at the time, but it's not now. And I feel like that links back again into that whole perfectionism concept. Is you have this curated idea of perfection, right? But that's perfection for you right now. Perfection for you when you were 14 would, like, you know, when I was 14 in the middle of an eating disorder, perfection for me was a thigh gap and weighing as little as possible. Perfection for me now, well, I mean, I don't care.
It's not
aesthetic. I like the fact that I'm messy, because actually that's way more fun.
And also like it's probably helpful for you to be a little bit messy, like because it was about control. I imagine back then. Like, I'm very much, I toy with addictions and have done for a long time. Gambling, drugs, I did too much. I wouldn't have ever said that I was addicted, but like I've recently come off the back of just smoking weed every day from like 7 a.m. to like when I went to bed, and that's very recent. And I'm one of those unfortunate people who can function on that amount of weed. So yeah, I needed that though, and I'm glad that kind of stuff has happened, because it shines a light on you at things. Then you come out and you rise like the phoenix. I can't believe you ever got me to say that. But that's what happens, right? You get better. And even if we are happy in lives, we still seek out this discomfort. People still exercise. People still watch horror films.
We crave that breaking of the comfort zone. Like for me, if my life is too calm, I can't thrive. I need stress. I need a problem. I need, because I want to evolve. I want to learn. I want to grow.
You say you can't drive?
I can't thrive.
Okay, I thought you said drive. I was like, try drink driving if you want chaos. Like, maybe you'll be in your element. Who knows? Oh goodness, you really want to fuck things up for a bit.
Just like test the life. No, I actually can't drive though. Fun fact, never happened.
It's all right. You're not missing out on much. It just means you have to do it all the time.
Yeah, that's true. And it actually makes me walk more that I don't drive. And I live in London, so public transport, it's easy. Yeah, it's easy. I can't remember where I was going with my point with that.
Something about you can't thrive without chaos, to some extent.
Yeah. And I think actually when, like, as someone who suffered with mental health, I think if someone had said to me, because I don't know about you, but when I was poorly, in like whatever you want to label it, I consider I was unwell.
You call it what you want. That's how
exactly. I thought that was the problem. I thought that I saw myself as broken, that there was something wrong with me. I didn't fit. I felt like a square peg in a round hole. I felt misunderstood. And if someone had said to me, that's your magic, the fact that you are hurting, that you feel misunderstood, that you're broken, that's your magic, because from that you are going to grow and expand and evolve, and it doesn't matter if you struggle with these things. That's a good thing. And that sounds really odd to say out loud, that and mental health isn't a good thing. It's horrible, and it's so pain inducing and can be like lifelong battles for people. However, I wouldn't be the person I am today, and that sounds so cliche, but I wouldn't have made the connections I had. I wouldn't have viewed the world in the way that I do if I hadn't have gone through that shit bit.
Yeah,
and I think at
14
the time,
as well. Fair play, mate. Well done.
Thanks, babe. It's all right, we move. I've always been an old soul, so let's just say I was like 30 back then,
That's interesting. It's interesting.
I think it would have made people, like, that's what I say to people now if they come to me and they're like, I'm really struggling, I feel so broken. I'm like, you're not broken, you're growing. Like, you're like that little seed that's just starting to evolve, and that pain is you breaking out of that old version of yourself. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
No, it definitely does. And there was one part that I read in that selfie book that I was talking about earlier.
I'm going to read that.
Honestly, Will Storr is my idol, and I email him and tell him that every month. But so in that book, like, he's so open about his thoughts about himself, and my internal voice is often one of like, mate, it doesn't matter. Like, there is no self. This whole thing's an illusion. It doesn't matter. Or it's just like, yeah, you're just a bit of a prick, but that's like all right. Or like, it will be really horrible. And so many people are like, oh, you shouldn't speak to yourself like that. I'm like, why do you get to decide how I speak to myself? Like, it's got me here so far, and this is all right. Like, I don't mind this. I'm almost too comfortable right now. To this point, but everyone's a fucking expert, right? Everyone's telling you what to think about yourself and telling you how to feel about yourself. But really, like, you're the one that like knows yourself. Of course, self-compassion and treat yourself as if you were a friend, but sometimes you speak to your friend how they need to be spoken to, and that is
to be cruel, mate, to be kind, isn't it?
Come the fuck on, for just like, maybe it would be better if you moved past this. Like, it would be healthy for you. And people miss that out with the whole like self-compassion, self-love thing. They just want it to be like, oh, you're just trying so hard and you're just doing so well, and just
it's that avoidance thing again, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just bollocks, man. It's
it's I think yeah, I think there's something so interesting. I notice even like, so one of my friends has got a little boy, and he's like my little dude. Freaking love this guy. And he's at school and they have like their school races and stuff like that. And he's so uniquely himself. Like he's a proper skater boy, but then he loves dolls, and like he's just this beautiful amalgamation of joys.
Ledge.
Yeah, like a little lead, right? And he's at that age where he's like, nothing's like infiltrated him yet. He's still doing his
The
thing.
innocence has not been ruined.
Yeah, not yet. He's like fighting through it, and I'm hoping he'll cling on to it for as long as he can. And then I found out like with schools now, with races, like, you know, when you do like sports day.
Yeah.
I used to hate sports day because when I was at primary school, I was as round as I was tall, and like I was literally just prime target for bullying. I was not built as an athlete, which is ironic because I then had a dancing career, but like as a kid I was literally a potato. It was vile. And if you were rubbish in sports day, you were bollocked for it. The kids that were sporty would back you down. Like if you weren't in the top 3 medals, like there was a back down. Now everyone gets a medal. And as lovely as it is that it's the taking part that counts, there also needs to be that element of winning and knowing that there's and where I'm going with this is that avoidancing again of, oh, we don't want them to feel bad.
Yeah.
But actually sometimes you need to for motivation.
Well, not even that you make them feel bad. It's just like, let them know that like, if you don't win, you don't win.
Winner. Yeah.
Like, and also okay. Like you'll probably be better at that person than art or maths or science. Yeah. You can't be good at it all, and neither can that person. There is
exactly.
I think annoyingly in every like primary school there is that enigma, that one kid who's like the fastest, the smartest, the tallest, got the tallest big brother who could beat anyone up if they wanted him to. Like there is this like enigma at each one.
Each school.
But it is kind of, well, I guess it makes it not rare, but it's just that one person. Everyone else can like compete for the
have their thing that they're
whatever it is, whatever. Yeah. God, school dynamics.
Oh gosh. But like, and that makes me sound awful to think like, oh, I want them, like I don't want all the kids to get medals. No, I mean, like, I want them to know that if they work for something and they get it, it means so much more than if it's just everybody getting the same. And why I'm saying that is linking in with that whole like, oh, it's fine, like you're doing great. Actually, no, you're not. If you've not got out of bed for 3 days, and that's not great, is it? And you know it's not great and it's not good for you. So how are we going to get you out of it? And I think there's that we've got this end goal without the method in how to get to that end goal now with self-care, self-help, whatever that is. And that's why I link that back to the race, because it's like you're not going to be motivated to win that race if everyone has a medal.
Mate, I would just walk it.
I wouldn't even run it. I used to schedule my singing lessons to PE.
Now. Honestly, like I think when I first started the podcast, I was like, oh, I want to have the best podcast. And I'm like, oh my God, I definitely don't want the best podcast. Because
so much pressure.
That maybe where we had it a little bit more when we were kids about like winning, like there is this competitiveness in society of like, I want to do this, I want to be the best, I want to be this. Well, actually, what about just being mediocre and being all right with that? Wouldn't that be better?
To be good
so
at
wouldn't
that.
It be better to accept that just in case you fall short? Whereas for me, I'm thinking I'll enjoy life a lot more if I just accept mediocrity now, and that way I can limit things. I'm gonna go kind of like minimalist this year in terms of like, this is quite a nice like desk setup, right?
Yeah, you've
this
got
will
a nice
not exist as
there.
soon as I've moved out of London. I'm selling all of this shit, and I would have maybe 5 or 6 t-shirts, 3 pairs of shorts, and everything's going to be stripped back. Because another thing that I've been learning from philosophy is to sort of bulletproof yourself against life is to cease to hope and you cease to fear. Or in other words, you put it like, you want to understand a way to lose it all and keep smiling.
To have the value in the most basic of things rather than all of this additional stuff that was sold, these stories.
I've got
essentially
like 400 quid's worth of prints in this office, and like, what's the point in that?
Oh yeah, look, the wall behind me.
Yeah,
a ton of prints. I
get it, it's nice, but it's just not me anymore. And I think I've obviously had to like go through that.
It goes into the growth, doesn't it, of what we said. Like, you know, I'm still very much in the phase where I like pretty things, and I'm not afraid to say it. It makes me feel better. Like if my environment looks nice,
I still like them.
but you just don't have the attachment to it anymore.
Yeah. And also, if I'm going to be accepting mediocrity and potentially not being that successful, like, oh my God, what if I do lose all my money? I'd rather have my money for my prints ready there to get my next meals.
Yes.
But I'm working that out, and let's face it, that could change by next year. You never know. I might have to want to be buying all my stuff back from pawn shops or whatever.
I think it's interesting because, like, when we talk about like attachment to value and things like that, I link this into the whole book concept of where we have a lot of stories, a lot of versions of all kinds of things. So like, just like you'll pick up a book. Someone said to me the other day, you're not the main character in everyone's life. And it completely changed. I'm such a people pleaser. I care what people think too much. And I'm working on it. Like 2022 is the year of boundaries for me.
Literally evolution. So I wouldn't give yourself a hard time. Yeah.
It's just, you just have to work at it. But I think knowing that there's a different story, a different version of you, your life, your achievements to everyone else, because they will create that story based on how they see you, I think is so interesting. And I think as soon as someone said that to me, now when I pick up a book, I think it's so interesting that I pick up that book and have that version of that character in my head, but that will be very different to what you have. And that's exactly the same in real life. The version that you've created of me in your head from this podcast will be completely different to how my best friend sees me, to how my mom sees me, to how my boss sees me, you know?
Well, it's completely different to how I would have perceived you at the start of this conversation. It's like, you see how nervous I was before I answered that question about like the manifesting, just because the name of the podcast, Smile to Health, like it's got the word smile in it. So I'm like, well, maybe she's really positive all the time. And like, I'm really negative all the time. Someone asked me to run something for them. Like this company wanted me to run this thing basically, and I was like, you don't want me as the face of this, because I'm not gonna do the like whole positive thing. It's not me.
I'm not gonna be the version of you.
It doesn't sell. That's the thing.
No,
it doesn't sell, unfortunately. But what I'm saying is there's like a positive. That is a positive thing. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad.
It's not a negative thing, even though I'm pretty negative. I'm more negative to the point of like it helps me be like tranquil with life. Like whatever happens, I'm always at this one point, and I'm feeling all right. And all right is all right with me.
Yeah, I think that's interesting as well, because it's interesting. Yeah, you would describe me as smiley and positive, because I guess that is very much my energy, my aura, and I do just naturally have quite a positive outlook in life. But I have that because I had 10 years of a really shit, negative, crappy outlook of life.
You're like, at least I'm not in that place anymore. Anything's a win.
So and actually it's weird because to everyone else it probably seemed really positive and overexcited about life, but actually to me this is just going, well, it could be worse. Like this is great. Like, you know, me at 14, like not a nice person to meet, miserable fucker. This person now, oh my God, I'm just like going through the day, hoping for the best, taking each day as it comes, doing what feels good. But it's interesting, isn't it? Again, like with what we're saying, like that to anyone else, it's like, she's so positive. And it's like, actually, just making it through my day.
I'm gonna go back to the whole Instagram thing, just before whenever this ends. Like the fact that people on Instagram have to say, oh guys, I get sad too, you know. The fact that we have to say that just shows how misleading the whole thing is. So, oh guys, you know I have down days as well. Do you? Really? As a human, have a couple down days?
Who knew?
So yeah, that was just something I wanted to push in there.
No, I agree. It's the same with the whole rise in the body positive movement and all of that, and that we have to physically show our roles for people to say, oh my God, you have roles as well, or wrinkles, or bad skin, or don't have as much money, or the fact that we have to.
I've been repping wrinkles since I was like 14, so people are just like coming onto I created them.
Oh, you're like the OG founder of it. Rocking a wrinkle from 14. Well, on that note, let's bring it back to books. I want to know your top 3 books. You can make it of 2021 if that's easier, because you've read a lot of books. What book you're reading next, and your advice for anyone looking to read.
Okay, so earlier you asked about books of people who are struggling with their mental health. I'm going to just base on what I'm going to assume the demographic of this podcast is, and it is a good book, and it's called Emotional Agility by Susan David. So that if people are struggling with their mental health, that is good, because it's not too soft. In fact, it's not soft at all. It is about being emotionally agile and being able to move with your emotions. And she talks beautifully in the book about how you should dance in the rain and not try to run from it. It's great.
Love that.
My top 3 books of 2021. Oh, geez, that is tough. I've read about 84 of them, right? So I can't remember.
Wow, my goal is to read 22. So the fact that you've done, or like 3 books that come to mind.
4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. I've only recently come across him, and I've got him coming up on the podcast soon, which I'm buzzing about. But it is the anti-productivity book, and I'm so glad I found it and that I read it. And it's
wow, I need that.
Kind of pushed me into existential crisis. But when I came out the other side of that, when I rose like a phoenix out the other side of that, I felt great.
You're never gonna let me get that
down. So yeah, 4,000 Weeks. Selfie by Will Storr is fucking brilliant. And I'm just going to have a look at what I've got on my shelf. Do you know what's a really nice book? And I didn't read it last year. I read it the year before. But the Tao of Pooh. It's spelled Tao. The Tao of Pooh. It's philosophy through the lens of Winnie the Pooh. And it's nostalgic. And I just loved it. So that's a really good book. What book am I reading next? I'm honestly reading about 5 at the moment. So what's next on my list? This is Stumbling on Happiness by Daniel Gilbert. So a lot of the like self-help industry books refer to Daniel Gilbert. This is like a revolutionary book written in 2010. It hasn't been revisited since, because it's all still pretty much valid.
Wow.
And like Mark Manson has said one of its favorites, Jordan Peterson recommends it. A lot of these like people who are like well respected in the book space have recommended it. So I actually read about the first 30 pages when me and my ex-girlfriend were breaking up, and I wasn't feeling like Stumbling on Happiness at the time. So I put it down for a bit. But my advice to people getting into reading is, of course, in terms of like habit building, just attach it to something you already do. You had a great idea earlier about putting a book over your phone. Make it obvious. Put it somewhere where it's frictionless and easy to do. And if you're reading a book that you don't like, put it down. You don't have to finish it. No one's going to mark you. There is no test. If you really are struggling to do like prolonged reading, read for comprehension and read for understanding. Once you've got the concept and once you're happy with it, you can skip pages if you want. It's absolutely fine. So like these non-fiction books that are a little bit more like dense, you can skip pages.
I always have to have a couple on the go. I can't
I don't like skip them personally, because I obviously am like going through like a fine-tooth comb, because I'm going to be talking about it a lot, and like I have such a thirst for what's in there. But for people who find it more difficult and are not weirdly obsessed with books, don't be afraid to like skip a few chapters, or if you think you're not really bothered about a chapter, like skip it and maybe go back to it another time. It's your book to do what you like with. There's page numbers there just because it kind of follows that order, because that's what humans like doing. But if you don't like doing that, you don't have to. What was the other question?
I think you answered them all actually. Top 3 books, book you'd recommend, and because you did the mental health one, and then reading tips. But that actually leads to the 2 questions that I ask every guest. Changes each season, so you'll be in season 3. Lucky devil. Nice. I know you said you're a very negative person, but can you tell me a highlight of your week? Last week? It's only Wednesday.
I flew back from Mexico last week, and in the airport I felt a total sense of peace. Even after I just paid like $30 for a BLT, which tasted like shite. So
airport food is so expensive. It actually hurts.
It was not good. And then getting back to my lovely flatmate, and we were chatting about books, and I've got him to read some Stoicism, and it's been great. So going back to jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of highlights in my week. I try and make sure that I do something that I enjoy every day. I know I was saying earlier that we're not hedonists, but I don't necessarily know if I live like that. I think a lot
You
of
need
my
a bit
stuff
of the
that
fun stuff.
I do a lot of difficult things, but I enjoy them in a sense. You know what I mean?
No, that makes sense.
So it's not that I'm
sense.
like, oh my God, let me go and get pissed, or let me go out and let me go to this club. Like my stuff is like, oh, let me go and get strangled by someone. That's cool.
Do you know, I've met so many people recently that do jiu-jitsu. It's like such an interesting sport to me because it is bizarre and unique in its own way. North London.
Oh, North London. Oh, I'm in Southwest. I was going to say come along to Wandsworth, but it's a bit far, isn't it?
My friend Gemma lives in Wandsworth. She's trying to bully me south of the river.
It's soulless down here. Don't do it.
Oh, is it? I went north just to be a bit rogue, and I actually quite like it around here.
Yeah, a bit more space.
Yeah, there's lots of green things.
Marginally.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's London after all. And my final question to end the podcast, which makes me sad because I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it's good.
Is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
The best piece of advice I'd ever given was actually in the form of a question. And this relates to overthinking. And this came from my therapist is, you know, and you like project into the future. And I was telling her about this scenario that I thought was going to happen. She said, oh, Ed, do you mind me asking, how many times have you been right? And when you think about how many times you're like trying to predict the future, or you make up these stories in your head and you really actually think about whether you've ever been right, it's quite a humbling experience, but definitely an eye-opening one as well. So if you are one of those people who lives in the future and tries to like come up with all these elaborate stories, just remember you're not often right, if ever.
Yeah, never. Wow, what a way to end the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. You've got so many interesting perspectives, which is one of the big reasons why I wanted you on here, because you're not afraid to speak your mind, you've done your research, and you've been through the mess. But yeah, for those who kind of want to know a bit more about what you're doing and what you're up to, I know you've got a workshop coming up soon, and I know you hate self-promo, but here's your little moment to promote socials, plans for the future. And be really uncomfortable.
Guys, you've listened to the podcast. You know, this is probably quite a good representation of me as a person. So on Instagram, it's at a need to read with the number 2 and not the word. Everything you'll find through there. The podcast, email list. I send an email every now and then. I can write a few good words, if I may say so myself. So I'll just say the Instagram and the email list, and everything important will go through those channels. But you don't have to. No worries if not. Can I just say, look, I do a lot of like podcast interviews with people and stuff, and it's been nice to chat with you. It's not structureless, but I can tell there was a form in there somewhere, but it was very natural and flowy, and you're a good host, and I like this conversation. And I mean,
oh wow, thank you so much. That's really lovely. Now I'm embarrassed.
Thanks for having me on.
Honestly, it's been wonderful to speak to you. Have a great day. Hope you stay in touch.
Yeah, take care.
Take care. Bye.